True Story Media.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Xyzal. At night.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
This episode may make you want to reach out to your ex. I do not advise that. This story is the exception, not the rule.
Let me just tell you about the first message, okay? I think it was March 9th. I'm blow drying my hair. A notification pops through and it's Facebook Messenger. I rarely get messages on Facebook Messenger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Gina. I toss the phone onto my bed. I don't even read the message. I don't open it. I just toss it and I'm sitting with this like, Gina's reaching out. Oh my gosh, Gina's reaching out. Because at that point in my life, I'm like fully vested in my solitude. I'm not looking for anything. I'm not chasing because I spent my whole life just chasing love. I'm just going to mind my business and enjoy my solitude and this little fun life that I've built for myself. And then here comes Gina.
I'm Brittany Yard. You probably think this story is about you. But this story is Gina's.
And so I sat on that message for like 90 minutes. My name is Viviana. I go by Viv. I am 41 and I've found myself in an interesting place of life where I'm like starting over.
So this is Viv, the one who caused Gina to flee the state of Colorado after their breakup 20 years ago. The one who all of Gina's friends, including me, told her not to reach out to. When she told me that she had reached out to you and was talking to you again, my first reaction was like, don't do that. Like, why are you going to start this cycle again? You've come so far.
That's so valid. All of her friends should have been doing that.
At this point, it had been 6 years since they had spoken. It might sound harsh that we were so against Viv. But who really wants their friend to reach out to an ex from 20 years ago? To understand the full story, we have to go back to the early 2000s.
Wake up, it's 2000!
Her and I first crossed paths in our early 20s. As I like to refer to it as our adult toddler years, where we're functioning and still figuring things out, right? Clearly had a pull towards one another, clearly had a connection with one another. It was really easy to just talk and be around each other and just be ourselves.
We have slightly different recollections, but I will admit I was quite intoxicated. I was in my early 20s. I was having a good time. We were at a gay club. I was clear that Viviana had a girlfriend. Back then, they identified as she, her. Now they identify as they, them. They were the it girl. I saw them and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm in love. Everybody wanted them. Everybody. I thought she was the most beautiful person I'd seen in my whole entire life. Like, I could not stop staring. I was very shy back then. I was very reserved. But something in me, I was like, this person needs to know that they are just wow. And so I got the guts to go up and tell. Now, if you ask Viv, they'll say that this drunk person approached them at the club. And from their recollection of the interaction, I ended up burning them with my cigarette. So I thought it was a super smooth moment. And they were like, wow, you were a mess, but very sweet. But eventually they broke up with their girlfriend. It took like months before I got the guts to give them my number. And then we just would spend hours on the phone. Like before even hanging out, back in the day, we would just sit on the phone. I'd sit in front of my TV and we'd talk about what we're watching on TV and just spend hours connecting. We eventually ended up dating. It was very young, very lustful love. The relationship got sexual and we had an amazing sex life. It was super complicated because we weren't necessarily at a point where we wanted to say we were official in a relationship, but there were I love yous. Plus, I was very emotionally immature and just, I didn't know how to work through my feelings, the feelings that I was having. And so I just put what felt like everything into that relationship.
When I crossed paths with Gina, I was very much in a space of, ooh, I'm getting a lot of attention from a lot of different directions. I wasn't equipped with how to communicate and express myself without worrying about somebody else's feelings, because other people's feelings would affect me. Hashtag codependency.
I never quite felt like a priority for Viviana. I always felt like the next cute chick that walks into the club is going to take Viviana away. There was always that risk. Viviana would find someone better than me, find someone that they liked more than me, find someone that's prettier than me, that entertained them more than me. And I mean, in the end, that's what happened. There was this woman that they'd always had a crush on, and though we were dating, they ended up making out with them one night, and one of my good friends told me about it because it was the one night I didn't go out, and I blew up.
I had a relationship with a woman for about 3 years after Gina. It doesn't feel good to say, but this is who I was back then. The woman that I dated was essentially the woman that I was disrespectful towards Gina with. And there's no pride in that. I was a little shit, you know? So I went down that path and I was in this relationship. But again, if I reflect back on it, still the same traits of like begging to be loved, being treated less than, just being addicted to the person and the feelings of that chaos. Like my nervous system's like, yeah, this is what we thrive in, because that was my experience in my childhood home.
I was a placeholder. At the time, that was just the reality of it. And that's not meant in a way that holds any sort of resentment at this point. We were young and both of us were working through our own things and didn't know how to do it well.
All the insecurities that I carried in my 20s come back up for me when I hear this story. I took so much of my self-worth from how other people saw me.
It was a complete mess. I spiraled for months. It was to a point where I had a job opportunity to come out to Seattle. I took a look at my life and I was like, every weekend I'm crying over this chick. Like, if I don't go, I'm going to be stuck in my life. And so I picked up everything I knew and loved, two of my best friends, and we moved to Seattle.
Even moving 1,000 miles away from Viv didn't fix everything.
We were still in contact a little bit here and there. I know that they came to visit me out here once early on. There's no visual in my brain of them being here, so I had blocked all that out. I kept getting tied back to them even while they were in Colorado.
It's really hard to walk away from what could have been.
The initial actual cutoff came after months of back and forth, even while I was up here. Like, we would always get to a place in our dynamic. We would eventually get just so comfortable with each other again, where we were saying, I love you. And for me, that was very real. And I'm sure for them, in their own way, it was very real as well. But then somehow there would always be a letdown, i.e. another chick that would pop up. One of my last trips that I went to Colorado where I saw Viv, we were talking almost every day again. It was, I love yous. It felt like we had actually genuinely reconnected. And then all of a sudden, a few days before I flew out there, things got weird. Which, you know, at that point, I've been in this circus long enough to know there's someone else. But I didn't want to accept it, and I flew out there with Patrick, my best friend. And we were out with mutual friends, and they're like, Viv and their girlfriend are coming. And I was shocked, but not. I played it as cool as I could. It hit me after that when I left Colorado that trip. I was like, I can't do this again. Like, oh my gosh, I can't do this again. This person doesn't love me the way I deserve or need to be loved.
And I remember that phone call. I think I got home from the bar and I called her. And this was one of our last interactions until years down the road. She was in the Philippines, I believe. She was international for work. And we were chit-chatting and I was like, hey, how's it going?
And they were like, hey, I just want to apologize. I'm hoping that we can be friends. I listened to them and, they were like, in the end, like, I see us being like best friends, sitting on a porch in our rockers, like talking shit about the kids on our lawn. Like they were like, you're always going to be someone that's in my life. And for the first time ever, I sat there and without any hesitation, I was like, no, I won't.
Going, and then she'd like drop the news. She's like, I can't be friends with you. Like, this is hurting me more than it's not. And I'm like, I understand that. I respect it. Ended that phone call. And I just remember hitting the back of my apartment door and sinking. And like, it hurt because I knew I was losing an important person, like somebody who added value into my life, but I wasn't equipped on how to navigate that and how to be healthy about it. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just keep on my merry life. And we went down our paths.
Over the next 2 years, they didn't communicate. They both continued with their lives 1,000 miles apart. Gina started dating the man she would end up marrying, and while Viv crossed her mind from time to time, she had started to move on. Never expecting that Viv would end up becoming her new coworker.
Absolutely salty that Viv was all of a sudden showing up on the team. Like, I was not expecting it. I had no clue. I had a life in Washington. I had moved on. They'd moved on. I smile because I'm lying if I say they didn't cross my mind over the years, because they did. But they weren't an active thought. They weren't something I was even, like, there was no chance in heck I would ever run into them. So to all of a sudden see a list of all the people on the team that are going to Vegas and see Viv's name pop up, I went to our admin so fast and I was like, hey, I can't sit by this person. And they were like, we're not taking special requests. And I was like, no, you don't understand. It will be an HR issue. Do not put me close to this person. And the first year we were there together, it was awkward. We saw each other. It was that whole, like, you're like, oh my God.
I remember walking into like the social happy hour and I saw her, and immediately like just a flush of just warmth, anxiety, all those chemicals that happen when you're like, danger, fight or flight, what do I do? And I saw her and like, there's no acknowledgement. And so the night continues, and I went up to her. Of course, I had some liquid courage, and I was like, hey, we don't have to be strangers.
And I was like, actually, I prefer it that way. And I walked away.
Heard, message received, and heard. And so for the following years at those events, we would see each other, no interactions, but we would feel each other in the room.
Every year after that, we never talked to each other. They respected my space. We, the admins continued to sit us as far away as possible from each other at the company events. But I always knew where they were at in the room. I think a big part of it was about trusting myself to not get pulled back in. Because the reality was, at that point, I'd spent years in that routine, just continuing to go through that cycle. And that's even after I left Colorado. I left the state to get away from them. And I continued to go back, and I continued to put myself in that situation. I had to have them out. I had to have them out completely. And now we were in a situation where it wasn't something I could control. Every year, I would see them, whether I wanted to or not. And that's why the first year, when we ran into each other at the buffet line, I was like, I have to make this as clear as possible. Like, we will not talk. We will never talk again. I knew that I needed to make sure it was clear to them that this was not an opening. This was not a crack in the door. And so we didn't talk for years, like a decade minimum.
Hey, it's Britt. I wanted to take a minute to share my experience with Hungry Root. If you follow me on Instagram, you know my trainer has me pushing heavy weights around the gym. He wanted me to get my nutrition dialed in. Thanks to Hungry Root, I am able to tailor my meals to meet all my protein and calorie goals. It is so easy to plan and order my food for the week, and each recipe takes less than 15 minutes to make. They also have smoothies and ready-to-eat meals for the days I am on the go. They make it so easy to eat high-quality food that fuels me. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/Brittany and use code Brittany. That's hungryroot.com/Brittany. Code Brittany to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/Brittany. Code BRITTANI. I want to take a minute and talk about hormone harmony. It isn't just for menopause, even though I was thrown into that last year. Finding a product that helps regulate my symptoms has been so crucial. Whether it's hot flashes, night sweats, or those racing thoughts and low moods, I've been able to use Hormone Harmony to help me feel like myself again. This isn't just a product for somebody that's going through menopause. It can help you at any stage in your life to help maintain optimal hormone levels. I also love Happy Mammoth's Complete Gut Repair. With the Complete Gut Repair, when I'm traveling, I can make sure that I continue to feel like myself, even with the time zone changes and dysregulation to my sleep. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com using the code YouProbably at checkout. That's happymammoth.com with the code YouProbably.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
And then shortly before COVID, right before I actually got married, we were at another company event. And this is like year after year, we see each other and I look the other way and they look the other way. And I was just at a point in my life where I was like, I am holding on to this for no reason. I honestly want them to have the best life possible. I don't wish them any ill will. I'm about to get married. It doesn't hold the same weight as it did, that pain. And I remember them, like, we made eye contact and something in them, like something in me and in them knew that it was time.
And that was the moment where we reconciled and we were cool with each other. I let her know, like, hey, I see that you're happy. You deserve it.
And we just had a conversation on the way from the venue back to the hotel, and then we went our separate ways. But we just kind of got to a point where we're like, okay, there's no ill will. We're fine.
We pushed the stuff and the hurt behind us, and then we just went about our lives.
After Gina and Viv had finally made peace, COVID grounded all the company-wide events, and that was the last time they would see each other in Vegas. Eventually, Gina would lose her job, and this is what kicked off her year of saying yes to everything. All the while, Viv was still in Colorado, and they had started their own journey.
Still like in this yo-yo of a relationship, trying to figure out stuff out, saying, pick me, choose me. I go through my washing machine and get spat out. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm in therapy. When I reflect back on it, all of my relationships have the same theme, me chasing and getting discarded and neglected constantly, and spent the majority of my early adult years, even into my like mid to late 30s, I will say, chasing for validation, chasing for worth, where my value really came from the success of my romantic relationships.
During this time in therapy, Viv was doing the hard work, looking inward and self-reflecting on who they were and how they got there.
Going into my adult life and my relationships, it was always very unhealthy cycles in relationships. And it was, hot and heavy, and then cold and dismissive, and just like groveling back, like, no, choose me over and over. And there was one relationship that really the universe and higher power was trying to smack it in me, what I needed to learn. And that's a stem from my childhood. I had amazing parents. They did the best that they could, but they were emotionally unavailable. So at that time that I needed it most, I didn't have self-worth instilled in me. I didn't have value instilled in me. I wasn't taught how to love myself and to boundary up and pick the right things, right? And so I was really taught, if I perform and I do well, then I'm worthy. So I showed up that way in my relationships. And it took me like 10 years to figure it out. I allowed someone to repeatedly discard me. I continued to beg to be chosen over and over and over again. And it was just the right combination of two people to have a very hot cycle. Like, it was addictive. So I became addicted to people and love, just this person essentially in the cycle, not knowing it. I finally hit my breaking point, probably around 4.5-ish years ago, I want to say. The cycle started, I got discarded, I was blindsided, like, what's going on? And I finally said, no, why am I showing up this way? So then I put myself into therapy. I put myself into therapy and did a lot of unpacking, and it's been about 4 years in. I've learned so much about myself. I am not the person who I was 4 years ago. Is it in me? Sure, when provoked, right? But having that awareness and just understanding how I showed up, why I showed up the way that I did, really allowed me to take a step back and go into that space of solitude, where at first it begins as loneliness, and you're just like, oh, poor me, I'm all by myself. And that's just a part of the healing process and the growing process, to get comfortable in sitting with yourself. It's uncomfortable, and sometimes it feels gross, and sometimes you're just like, I don't like who I am, but that doesn't mean that's who you are in your core. It's just how you've showed up. Look, 40s, best time of my life. I'm not trying to relive my 20s by any means, but if I had some additional tools, knowledge, and experience, I do wonder, where would I be today? But that's not to take away the path I had to go down to experience to get to where I'm at today. I started getting more active on social media and posting. Because of my journey and what I've experienced, I want to help other people. I'm like, hey, do the work. It's hard and it's tough, but it's so worth it, because you can show up and navigate this world 10 times better than any other way, than a wounded way.
This is the part of the story that I was watching unfold in real time.
To see them all of a sudden pop up out of the blue, and this wasn't like just like one, it was like multiple days of social posts. They were all very positive and very feel good, but I just wanted to check in.
Call it algorithms or fate, the universe wasn't going to let these two miss an opportunity to reconnect at this time in their lives.
I had no intentions of, oh, we're going to totally, like, this is my in. No, it was just, you're popping up on my socials. You haven't ever, like, I've never in the maybe 5 or so years that we'd been friends on Facebook, they'd never posted a story that I was aware of or that popped up for me. I just wanted to check in, just see how they were doing, see how life was treating them. I had no clue about like what they'd been through and where they were at now. I also didn't assume that like it would be anything past that. It was just a, hey, are you okay? And so I reached out. Viv will never let it go that my first words were against my better judgment. I reached out.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, your better judgment. I'm like, did you breakdance fight with your better judgment? And I know like right away, that's what just solidified. We're still the same people. Life has happened. Let's catch up and see what's going on. In those initial messages, like we chatted throughout the majority of that day, just catching up on things. She was really excited to share, like, you know, she's stepping out of her comfort zone. She's growing. She can't believe that she was just so complacent for so many years and an autopilot. And so I absolutely loved that she was in that position. So like her doing all these things, I'm like, okay, she's in a point in her life where she's doing some work. She's in self-discovery. She's healing. I am not going to throw myself into that bowl because that's unfair and undeserving. Like Gina deserves to experience this healing. Who is she after this relationship? Like, what is she wanting out of life?
I remember that Gina and Viv were constantly talking, and part of me was excited, but the other part of me was scared. I was afraid that Gina was going to get wrapped up in this toxic cycle again. I mean, how many of our exes have actually gone to therapy?
Have always had this super strong connection. And from that moment we started talking, I was like, I still hear your voice. I still can see you. I see you in front of me talking to me. But we talked like throughout the day, that first day, and then I thought that was going to be it. I thought, okay, that was nice. I'm moving on with my life. And then 2-3 days later, they messaged me. And I was like, why are you messaging me? We're not supposed to, like, this was a just quick, hey. I mean, but I was also happy. I was happy. But we ended up talking all day. And then that turned into weeks and months of them eventually becoming the first person I talked to in the morning and the last person I talked to at night.
I had posted a story and I was like, hey, make your recommendations, movie recommendations. What you got? This is like really in the depths of my micro retirement. So she makes a recommendation of past lives and I Google it and I'm like, huh. So the storyline of past lives is, you know, a connection between two people. Life goes on, life brings them back together, but it just never aligns. But they're two souls that are meant to be. And she's like, don't read into it. And so I watch it and then I text my best friend from childhood. I'm like, yo. So, and she's caught up on Gina reaching out and we're all like, oh, what's going to happen? I'm like, yo, Gina made this recommendation of past lives. Am I reading into this or not? She's like, oh, you should absolutely read into that. But it was really aligned with our story. And I think that was her subconsciously saying like, there's still something here. There's still some feelings.
And I know when Viv hears this, they're going to love it. There was probably a part of me that did think this movie makes me think of Viv. I initially recommended it because it was a good movie. It was a really good movie and it asked for movie recommendations. But when I watched that movie, Viv was someone who definitely came to mind because no matter what, there was always this pull. There was always this connection that I could not put into words, that for a while I was so upset that it was still there. And then now we had reconnected. Both of us were committed to building a friendship, rebuilding trust.
But I always played it safe because I knew she was in the casual dating world. I believed that she deserved the space and time that she needed without me being like, hey, what's up? So like, you want to be in a relationship? Because that's a disservice. I really believe that would have been a disservice to Gina in being like, no, focus on me now. The conversations were very friend driven. Like, yeah, I totally support you. But really the questions that she was asking me at the time, I'm like, friends don't ask friends these questions. Like, what do you think about long distance relationships? And how do you feel about living in different countries? And I'm like, why are you asking me these questions? A little did I know she was like writing down her little list. She's a list person. I love that about her.
They were on their own journey. At that point, they'd probably been out of a relationship for about 4 or 5 years. They were not actively dating. We used to joke. I was like, how are you going to meet someone? Like, you're going to have one hot Amazon delivery chick come by for you to meet because you're not going out, you're not doing anything. We were, I use the air quotes, friends, because we were being very supportive. They knew about my sexual journey. They knew about the guys I was dating. They knew everything. I told them about the sex club because there was no hiding any of it because I was like, we're just friends.
So it was all just, we're friends until it was, wait, it's not just friends.
That's next time on You Probably Think This Story's About You. You can support the show by joining us on Apple Podcasts or Patreon. Episodes are available early and ad-free. Our executive producer is me, Brittany Ard. Our senior producer and editor is Sydney Gladue. Story consulting by Mariah Gossett. Sound engineering by Sean Simmons. Graphic design by Nigella Shama. Opening theme by Youth Star and Miscellaneous. You Probably Think This Story's About You is a production of BDE Unlimited Productions. You can follow me for updates at brittany.ard on all social media platforms. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. Give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I love responding to comments on Spotify. Trolling the trolls is my new favorite pastime.